Brendon Paul is on the stand. This is Diddy's alleged drug mule. He's testifying. He said that he got $75,000 a year. He then got a raise to $100,000 a year, and he was also paid. And he said he was paid through Combs Enterprises. So they were very specific about that. Paul said he traveled frequently for work. He flew with Diddy on his private jet 3 or 4 times, but he said he usually traveled separately so he could get there early to set up Diddy's rooms. He said, quote, so when you walked in, everything was seamless and he had everything he needed. Paul said sometimes other employees like stylists, photographers would travel early with him as well. When he traveled for work, Paul said Combs' travel manager would book his travel, and they're just establishing all the employees were paid under Combs Enterprises to do this illegal stuff. So just keep that in mind as we go through this stuff. Paul said the longest time period he worked without sleep was when they were in New York releasing Combs' latest album. Paul stayed awake for about 3 days straight, although he did take some naps in between. He said, quote, I was young, so I was able to handle it. Paul testified that he took prescription Adderall and the rare use of cocaine to help him stay awake and alert during his employment. Because you got to remember, one of Diddy's charges is like what was it? It was something about I can't remember exactly the charge. It was something about mistreating employees or something like that. So Paul said he also smoked marijuana during his employment. Paul previously invoked the Fifth Amendment on the stand and signed an immunity order compelling him to testify. Once you sign an immunity order, you have no choice to testify. You got immunity. Brendon Paul testified that his mission was to make sure that Diddy was always happy. He said that Diddy told his assistants they should operate like SEAL Team 6. Paul said Combs fired him 2 or 3 times, and he testified about one incident that sticks out specifically in his memory in late October, early November 2023. Paul testified that he forgot Combs' Lululemon fanny pack when he wanted to go for a walk. That's when Diddy told Paul, I don't want to see your face. Call Christina Karam and tell her you're fired. Paul recalled that Diddy's former chief of staff, Christina Karam, told him to lay low soon after she sent Paul to set up Combs' London hotel room around Combs' birthday. Diddy never discussed the incident with him again. Basically, Diddy was like, yo, you fired. Call Christina Karam. Tell me you fired. And she was like, look, bro, he just tripping. He high. Like, don't even say nothing. Just be quiet. Just do what I tell you to do. Don't say nothing to him. He gonna forget that he fired you because he high. Paul said it was also, Paul said it wasn't a thing to talk to HR about any issues. If anyone had an issue, they went straight to Diddy or straight to Christina Karam. Said there was no HR involved. Christina Karam and Diddy were the judge, jury, and executioner. He testified that he saw Diddy use drugs, including cocaine, ketamine, ecstasy, and marijuana about once a month, but there were other times that he seemed high. The jury saw a photo Paul took in his early employment. So I guess this dude, Brendon Paul, took a picture of ecstasy in the powder form of ketamine and Molly that was dyed pink for aesthetic. So that's where people are saying that's the pink cocaine I think people be talking about. He said he took a picture of it. He probably was in there in them early days. You in there like, bro, I can't believe Diddy. Like, because you're looking at Diddy from the public perspective. Then you start working for him. You like, man, wait a minute. This dude is really, he doing a lot of drugs. Like, bro, I can't believe he took a picture. Paul said that Diddy and other assistants would tell him to obtain drugs for Diddy. He testified that he would buy marijuana about every 2 months, paying $4,200 for 16 ounces. Let me go back to my street days and see if that's the right number. For $4,200 for 16 ounces. Let me see. Let me do some math, man. I used to. Let me do some math. Let me go back to take me back. So he's paying about $2.62 an ounce. That's kind of crazy. That's out of. I'm from California, so I don't smoke, but I know the prices. He said he purchased the marijuana from Philip Pines. Dang, he telling everybody. Philip Pines, one of Combs' previous assistants. Paul said $2.60. Dang, he paying like $2.70 an ounce. For all my brothers in the chat that you still live that life. I pray that y'all get up out of that. But y'all know that's kind of crazy. Almost $300 an ounce for weed. Paul said that he bought other drugs for Combs fewer than 10 times. He testified that he would sometimes pay about $300 to $500 for 1 to 2 grams of drugs. And other times he would pick up packages without paying for them himself. So basically, dude was either going to pay for the drugs or he was picking up the drugs that was already paid for. On some occasions, he texted a drug dealer and they would come to Diddy directly to Diddy's home to deliver the drugs. The jury saw messages between Paul, a drug dealer, and another Diddy assistant named Jonathan Perez from February 2024. Paul testified that Perez put him in touch with the dealer to obtain drugs for Combs. In the text messages, the dealer said, "Is this for you or for Diddy?" Paul said it's for Diddy in response. And they read these messages aloud in court. He said, "But please don't disclose that. You could tell whoever it is, it's for me." Paul said once he received the drugs, he would give them directly to Diddy or put them in a Gucci pouch where the drugs were stored. Paul testified he would pick up prescription drugs for Combs at pharmacies under Diddy's real name or the alias Frank Black. So that was Diddy's alias. You know, Biggie Smalls called himself Frank White. Diddy calls himself Frank Black. I guess that's the alias that Diddy would use for picking up prescription drugs and other things. According to a lot of other testimonies during this trial, people were saying that was something that Diddy would call himself a lot in different situations. The jury saw messages between Diddy that Diddy sent to Paul, asking him February 14, 2024 to get him Xanax. Paul testified that Combs did not have a prescription for Xanax, but he wasn't able to obtain the drugs. So Brendon Paul said that Diddy's former chief of staff, Christina Karam, quote, didn't really want him involved in Wild King nights for some reason, but he set up and cleaned up a few times when he worked for Combs. Karam called them Wild King nights. So this is a recap of what Wild King nights were. So Jane, there was a Jane Doe that a lot of people were accusing. That's the woman that people were accusing of being 50 Cent's baby mom. We don't know, but that's what people were saying. She testified. She had a long testimony, and she talked about these Wild King nights, and there were hotel nights and different things. And then somebody else came after her, and it was a guy, and he talked about the King nights. And these are things that would happen at hotels. So Brendon Paul is going to testify to his knowledge of this. So it says Paul testified his understanding of Wild King nights were to include partying, alcohol, sex, drugs. The nights were at hotels during the beginning of his time with Diddy. He testified Combs stopped holding them at hotels after the Cassie lawsuit. And we know that Diddy was still doing the freak offs literally until the day he got arrested. That Diddy got arrested sometime last September. And that day, they said that they found, and actually the hotel that Diddy was arrested at is now suing him, by the way, which is a whole nother thing. They're suing him, I believe, because he was going to have a freak off in their hotel room the day he was arrested. After they raided his houses, after all the crazy stuff happened, after all the running around and all the stuff, when everybody knew Diddy was getting these lawsuits, he was still having freak offs. That's how serious it was for him. And he got caught that day in the middle of it. So this is what dude is talking about right here. He said he stopped holding the hotel nights after Cassie's lawsuit hit. Let's see what else he's saying. He described how he would set up a room for Combs on a Wild King night. So he testified, Brendon Paul testified, that when he set up for a Wild King night, he would ensure he would ensure the room had baby oil, alcohol, small toiletries, and extra sheets and towels. He said the assistants shared a list that included all the items needed to set up for those nights. Paul said he often obtained supplies through Diddy's property managers. He said if he paid for supplies with his personal credit card, he was reimbursed through Combs's financial personnel. This is all, they just setting it up that, like I said, the financial part came through Diddy's legal company so they could say it was illegal business being conducted. Because we all know, especially with drug cases and things like that, we know that they about to seize everything. They're about to freeze every account. All the money that Diddy's accounts have in it, everything is going to be freezed and seized. Paul said once he provided Diddy with $5,000 cash before a Wild King night, and he said he got the cash from security. He testified that another assistant told him he once left cash in an envelope at a front desk of a hotel. Paul said that Combs would sometimes contact him during a Wild King night via audio message or FaceTime. The jury saw photos of outfits from a sex shop that Paul sent to Combs. Paul testified that Combs had asked him to run to the store while he was with Jane, the Jane Doe, but Combs never responded after Paul sent the picture of the outfits. Diddy freaky. Paul wore gloves to clean up after the hotel nights. Obviously, I would hope so, bro. He testified the rooms were in disarray, and he would put towels and sheets into a pile, throw out empty bottles of baby oil and liquor. Paul said he wore gloves during the cleanup for sanitary reasons. One time, Paul saw a white powder he believed was drug residue. The jury saw a photo of the hotel room with sheets covering the furniture. Paul testified that he sent the photos to Combs' travel manager, and this was to give her a heads up that there might be some damages charged to the room. The jury saw a selfie of Sean Diddy Combs and his former chief of staff, Christina Karam. I'm telling you, she keep coming up because they about to bring her to the stand. I'm telling y'all. The jury saw a selfie of Sean Diddy Combs and his former chief of staff, Christina Karam, and his former assistant, Brendon Paul, on a private jet taken March 25th, 2024, before Paul was arrested for the cocaine possession. It was that day. That's the day he was arrested. So he took a selfie with Diddy and Christina Karam that day. He said, it says right before he was arrested for cocaine possession at the Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport. It says they were about to take off on a flight to the Bahamas for a vacation with Diddy's family, Paul said. Paul testified he hasn't seen or spoken to Combs basically since that photo was taken. Paul didn't tell law enforcement that the cocaine wasn't his that day. When asked why he didn't snitch on Diddy that day, Paul said it was for loyalty. Paul testified that the charges against him related to the incident were dropped because, this is what he said, because I have a really good lawyer. Get the... Hey, why I'm laughing is because, man, I'll tell you guys, I teach business and I coach business now, and, you know, I've cleaned up my life a lot, but I come from the street, man. I come from poverty. And so there's a thing when we were young, it used to be like a joke in the hood that my lawyer's a beast, bro. When somebody come home from snitching, that's always their excuse. It's like, bro, no, you just snitched on half the hood. It has nothing to do with having a good lawyer. And they would come home, my lawyer's a beast. They'd be like, bro, didn't you just catch 2 bodies? How are you home already? My lawyer's a beast, bro. No, fool. You told on everybody. Anyways, they asked why his charges were dropped. He said, because I have a really good lawyer. Get out of here. Said he's completed over 20 drug classes and submitted a random drug testing. Bro, getting caught with cocaine at the airport is a federal crime. It ain't got nothing to do with you having a good lawyer. So now Diddy's lawyer is cross-examining this guy, Brian Steele. Brian Steele is the lawyer that was on Young Thug's trial as well. So Brian Steele asked Paul about his previous tenure on the Syracuse University basketball team. Paul confirmed that he works hard and strives for perfection. He said he was willing to work long hours for Diddy and learn from the exposure that he got to the music industry through Diddy. He confirmed that handling drugs was a minor part of all the work that he did for Combs. He said, Brian Steele asked, so you were not some drug mule, right? Paul said, absolutely not. Paul said that he believed the drugs he obtained were just for Combs' personal use. Steele asked if Paul thought Wild King nights were also personal for Combs. Asking him if you're some drug mule, that's all connotations and speculative. Like, bro, he may not feel like a drug mule, but if you're running around getting drugs, picking up packages, you know, making drug deals on behalf of Diddy, for Diddy, you're a drug mule, bro. We going off of legal definitions, and Brian still know that. He just got to defend his client. Paul said that he believed the drugs he obtained were just for Diddy's personal use. Steele asked Paul if he thought Wild King nights were also personal for Combs. He said, I considered it to be like an escape. He confirmed that he believed it was Combs' personal time to be alone with Jane. Paul testified that he often spoke with Jane, the Jane Doe, one of Combs' accusers, before the King nights, almost every time afterwards. He confirmed that he never saw anything that made him feel like she was hesitant or not willing to participate. Why would he, though? During cross-examination, Diddy's lawyer asked him about the arrest on March 25th. 2024, Paul confirmed his arrest was for a small amount of cocaine for Combs' personal use, that Paul had accidentally left it in his travel bag. Neither Combs nor Christina Karam asked him to travel with the cocaine that day. Paul recalled telling law enforcement that everything in the bag was his. Then his heart dropped when the agent pulled the cocaine out of the bag because he didn't mean to travel with it. So on one hand, it's like bro talking out both sides of his neck. Yeah, it was for Diddy, but Diddy didn't ask me to bring it. Like, bro, what? So the former assistant for Diddy said if he would work for, if he would ever work for, Diddy's lawyer asked the former assistant if he would have ever worked for a criminal. Paul testified absolutely not. Still asked Paul if he felt indebted to Combs for all the experiences he received while working for him. He said, I guess. What you mean by indebted? Still asked Paul if he had learned a lot from Combs, and Paul confirmed, yeah, I learned a lot from him. He then asked Paul if he had good experience working for Diddy. He said, for the most part. The cross-examination ended. On a redirect, the U.S. attorney, the prosecutor, asked Brendon Paul if he believed or what he believed was taking place during the Wild King nights. He said there was sex happening and partying. Paul confirmed that he was not present in the hotel rooms, so he did not know definitively if anything illegitimate was happening. He said, sitting here today, how do you feel about Mr. Combs? Brendon Paul said, it's complicated. Yeah, it's complicated because Buddy ain't come get you from jail when it was time to get you from jail. You have to pay that on your own. And that was the end of his